Good morning, everyone. I'm Sid, your host and creator of Sit Podcast. Our guest today is a Post-Doctoral Research Associate researching the consequences of conspiracy theories. He completed his doctoral thesis at the University of Kent, which focused on the relationships between attachment, anxiety, catastrophizing, and belief in conspiracy theories. Without further ado, all the way from UK, I present to you our guest today, Dr. Ricky Green. Hi, Ricky.
Hi, Sid. Yeah, thank you for inviting me on and that introduction.
Thanks for taking the time. I know you're a busy person, so we appreciate that. Would you like me to call you Dr. Ricky or Ricky? What do you prefer?
Ricky's fine.
Perfect, Ricky.
Yeah.
All right, Ricky. So before we kind of get into the podcast, would you take a minute or two to explain, give a little bit background about yourself to our audience?
Yeah, sure. As you said, I've recently finished my PhD just about a year and a half ago, and I'm currently working on a big project called the Conspiracy FX Project. And it's quite different. It's still researching conspiracy theories, the psychology of conspiracy theories. But what I was doing in my PhD was researching why people believe in conspiracy theories. So what psychological factors make it more likely for someone to be drawn or to find conspiracy theories attractive. So I completed that a year and a half ago, and now I'm working at the same university with Professor Karen Douglas, who leads this really big project, the Conspiracy FX Project. And in this, we now concentrate on the consequences of conspiracy theories. So whilst we still look at why people are drawn to them, we are mainly looking at the consequences of these beliefs. So consequences to science, health, but also to people themselves. So for the people who share conspiracy theories, a lot of the research that I'm leading in this project looks at, how people perceive others who share conspiracy theories. So I've got a great interest in this. I got into it because I've always found conspiracy theories fascinating, and I know a lot of people that believe in them. And admittedly myself, I was kind of entertained by them as well before I started my studies. That's kind of why I'm looking in this field, because I'm interested in why people believe in them.
Thanks, Ricky, for the intro. The reason I wanted to do this was I actually want to thank Professor Karen Douglas over here for highly recommending you as she speaks highly about you. The reason I wanted to get into it is because I had a guest who is one of the, I would say, loudest voice in the flat earth theory, and it was very hard to understand him. He defies science. He accused me of being a victim of pseudoscience, that we are brainwashed by pseudoscience. And overall, he says there is only 2 billion population. And I come from India, where the population is 1.4 plus billion,
Yeah.
So it's very hard to reason with some people. And once again, I'm not trying to bash him. I have respect for him. So, I want to know, what is a conspiracy theory and why do people get drawn to it?
Well, conspiracy theories are many different people, and that goes into the fact that there's many different reasons why people are drawn to them. So I can give you kind of a breakdown as to the perspective that we kind of go with here at the University of Kent, but also, so this is a perspective that Professor Karen Douglas put forward with other colleagues here. But it seems to be widely agreed upon with researchers around the world as well, that people are motivated to believe in conspiracy theories. And when I say motivated, I mean subconsciously as well. So it's not like a deliberate effort to... so they're motivated to believe in them as a way of satisfying psychological needs that we all have. For instance, so if I talk about 3 broad needs, we all want to feel secure and in control of our lives. We all want to feel like we have an understanding of the world. So we have a need for knowledge. And we also have social needs. We want to feel good about ourselves, so self-esteem, and we want to feel good in our groups and feel good with people around us. Now, for not everyone has all of these needs met, and so some people feel insecure, and some people don't feel good in their social groups, for instance. And it's these people that we're finding, it's these psychological factors that we're finding draws people towards conspiracy theories. So if I start with like the need to feel secure, so what we call that is like this existential need to feel secure and in control.
So Ricky, if I understand, I'm sorry to. So
Yeah.
you're telling me you're breaking down the psychological factors, which also includes the social factor, the self-esteem.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'd include that as in like your psychology, you know, like these social factors. This is kind of all makes up your psychology. Now, I can, you know, without please do stop me if I need to like explain a little bit more, or if I give
Please.
too much information.
Sure.
But if I start with like this need to feel secure, that's
Right.
that's what my PhD thesis was on. So as you mentioned earlier, I looked at in my PhD attachment anxiety, catastrophizing, and conspiracy belief. And that was so the reason I looked at that, because in my master's I found a relationship between attachment anxiety and conspiracy belief, in that people who are anxious about their relationships, which is what attachment anxiety is, they're more drawn to conspiracy theories. And the reason that I found in my PhD as to why is, well, people with attachment anxiety, they're inherently insecure with their relationships. And their insecurity translates into them. They feel uncertain that, you know, people around them, close people, are not paying enough attention to them or supporting them. So one of the things I theorize and found in my PhD is that perhaps people with attachment anxiety have this tendency to catastrophize, to exaggerate threats that are around them. And the reason that they do this, says attachment theory, is because that's one way of getting the attention of significant others. So perhaps, and this is kind of what I've argued in my PhD, is that because we consistently find this relationship between catastrophizing and conspiracy belief, that perhaps conspiracy belief is, well, endorsing conspiracy theories and talking about them might be another way of catastrophizing and trying to get, you know, the attention of significant others. And, you know, with the ultimate aim of trying to make them feel more secure by having close others supporting them, if that makes sense.
So I hope you don't mind if I'll give you some pushback, you know.
Yeah.
So what I understand is, now you said they need to feel secure, right? Is it more like personal relationships, professional relationships? And from what I can understand, it's more about validation in a social society. Correct me if I'm wrong, from what I'm perceiving.
Well, in this particular, like with attachment anxiety, it is about like personal relationships.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's about, so I know it can seem far reach, like, well, how would that relate to conspiracy theories? But it's about the particular ways that people with attachment anxiety act and regulate their emotions and things like that. And what the literature consistently shows, so beyond conspiracy theories, is that people with attachment anxiety have a tendency to catastrophize and exaggerate threats around them. And the reason that they do this is so that they can, you know, get attention from significant others, friends, family members, and things like that. Because of their attachment anxiety, they see that as the best strategy to get that attention. And in my work, I've consistently found attachment anxiety to be related to conspiracy belief. And during my PhD, I then find catastrophizing to also be related to conspiracy belief. So putting this all together, this is only one argument, by the way, because as I was saying, like, there's many different reasons why people are drawn to conspiracy. This is just one narrative, right? And there's lots more that, you know, we can discuss, but I'm just discussing this because this is particularly what I looked at during my PhD. But yeah, basically, like, people with attachment anxiety might be drawn to conspiracy theories as it's another way of catastrophizing about, you know, problems and issues that they're worried about.
So Ricky, then let me ask you, if I wanted to ask you, what are some of the personality traits of these people who believe in conspiracy theories, what will they be? The reason I'm asking that is because you said that they want attention, right? So if they want attention, they do get attention, and a lot of people believe in them. So what is it that makes them a leader in a group of conspiracy theories versus someone who is a follower? I hope do you understand my question?
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah. So what I've been talking about is just like the general people that believe in conspiracy theories. I've not really, to be fair, it's quite hard to answer that, because actually there needs to be a lot more research on not just the people that believe in conspiracy theories, but the leaders of these of sharing conspiracy theories. I think that's a really good question, and in all honesty, like I haven't really done the research that looks in that particular group of people, you know. And just to go back on what we were saying about like for people that are spreading them for attention, as I was saying, it's just specifically for the subset of people with attachment anxiety, for instance, right? But like, so with this insecurity, it's not just like attachment anxiety that will predict whether someone believes in conspiracy theories. It's feelings of powerlessness, general anxiety, people who are stressed, you know, like people can get solace in these conspiracy theories because it can explain why, you know, why they're having these issues in their life, right? And not just personal insecurities, but also things like relative deprivation. So how, you know, economically deprived you are compared to other people. Like low socioeconomic status is also a predictor of conspiracy belief sometimes. So it's really about like, you know, if you're not, I'm only talking from the point of view of the general conspiracy believers, that if you feel inherently insecure, like whether that's personally or economically, then you're going to be more likely to believe conspiracy theories as a way to, you know, explain your situation.
So Ricky, let me ask you, how do you measure an anxiety? I know you did your thesis in this. So what is it that you study? The main thing I want to know is, how do you measure the level of anxiety? For example, from scale of 1 to 10, if you say 6 and above lie in the conspiracy theory bracket. So how do you measure that?
So it's basically mainly survey based. So it is, but you know, we curate these surveys, and they're made from, you know, really theoretically driven work. Basically, so when I've measured attachment anxiety, I've used it from a validated scale that has like 18 statements that represent attachment anxiety, and you know, you get a mean average score, and if it's high, then they're high in attachment anxiety. If it's low, then they're more secure. And like some of these items are like, I've got to try and remember these. Like I worry that my my partner doesn't love me anymore. Things like that. Because that's what is inherent about attachment anxiety, is that they just have this worry that the people that are close to them don't love them anymore. And
you know, that blows my mind away. You just said that, because I mean, and I'm sorry if I interrupt you, or you know, because the thing is, like, that has nothing to do with conspiracy theory in a realistic world, right? It's just maybe they consider conspiracy theory as an outlet to validate themselves. I don't know if
and this is what I'm trying to argue in my PhD is it's in a way to maybe validate themselves, because what I argue in my thesis is that, you know, it is far reach, right? You know, that statement I just read to you, and you'd think, why would someone who scores high on that also score high in conspiracy beliefs? Well, just to let you know, I consistently find that in like 10 studies that I've ran, and studies that I've run before. So there's something there. It exists. People who score high on this attachment anxiety measure also score high in conspiracy belief. So in my PhD, that's why I tried to figure out why is this relationship here? And that's when I thought about catastrophizing. And as I was saying, so if you think about someone who is worried about their partner not loving them, the strategies, and this is what attachment theory says, which is like a well-developed theory. They say that people with attachment anxiety, because they are uncertain about their relationships, they feel like they need to, you know, instead of the most secure way of being in a relationship would be, you know, not really being worried about this sort of stuff, and you have trust in your partner and things like that, then everything's fine. But for people with attachment anxiety, they don't. They feel uncertain about their relationship. So one strategy for them to validate themselves, as you say, and to try and to get not like attention but support and to be heard is to express problems going on. People with attachment anxiety, they catastrophize about many things like stress and pain and stuff like that. They kind of exaggerate the threats that they are having, and that's why I think conspiracy belief is linked to that, because it's just another way of, you know, trying to express a threat and then trying to get the help and support and attention from significant others. I don't know if that's making a bit more sense now or not.
No, it does make sense. I'm just trying to make it more easy for our audience to understand, because, you know, some people, as I said, you know, might not understand how it correlates. But since you have a PhD in it, you've been doing it for years, it's always good to know from someone yourself. So I want to ask you now, now, some people think that the belief in conspiracy theories has been on the rise in recent years, fueled by crisis, social media. Do you agree? And if you do, then how do you guys measure this? Because once again, this is not related to attachment anxiety. We're talking about the rise in theory just because on social media what's going on, and especially in crisis. I have also studied that in crisis, conspiracy theories are born. So let us understand that.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's a really good question. And so I can only talk about the research that's already out there, nothing that I've done myself, but there has actually, basically the conclusion is that conspiracy theories they're not necessarily rising. Basically, one conclusion from a paper, and this is a really cool and interesting paper, they basically say like conspiracy theories ebbs and flows throughout time. There's peaks and they go down, and it's related to crisis and things like that. So during the we had a few things going on at the same time, right? We've had the pandemic with lockdowns. There's
I think that would be a great topic to kind of chime into it, because, you know, I have seen that you've also written a paper on the COVID-19 and relation and 2020. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
And the financial insecurities as well, and the Ukraine war, and there's just so much stuff going on that it may seem like conspiracy theories are on the rise, and there's just more and more, which, you know, at the current time, that's probably true. Like because there is new conspiracy theories, and they're being talked about a lot. However, you know, once these crises subside, you know, conspiracy theories start to go down again, right? And that's basically what has been found somewhat in the literature. Like there's this really cool study where someone looked at letters to Joe Uzinski and other colleagues in Miami University, looked at letters to the editor. It's a big newspaper that's been around for like nearly 100 years. I want to say the Times or something, but I could be wrong there. But either way, they looked at all the letters that have been sent to an editor over time, and they find that like conspiracy theories were talked about often, but like there was no significant sort of change. Like there wasn't like a proper upward directory of conspiracy theories being talked more and more about. It just seemed to like go up and down over time, and it was also related a lot to who was in power at the time as well. Like who was who was sending the letters depended on who was in power. So if the Republicans were in power, for instance, then it would be Democrats talking about conspiracy theories. And that's a whole other thing, by the way. What they concluded is that, and it sounds bad, but what they say is that conspiracy theories are for losers. And what they mean by that is it's for whoever's on the losing team. So for instance, like if you are a Democrat and a Republican.
That's a great point. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So like, if you're winning, then, you know, you don't need to just, you know, there's nothing, you're on top. So you got nothing really to talk about in regards to conspiracy theories. But yeah, like what they found in that cool paper as well, where they concluded that conspiracy theories ebbs and flows as opposed to continually going up. That if the Republicans were in power, it was Democrats sending in letters about conspiracy theories, and then vice versa. So that was a really interesting find from that paper. But yeah, just to go back to the original point, like even with social media being here and with all the crisis, as far as we're aware, like they're not going up and up. It's not like more and more people are believing about them. It doesn't seem like that. It's just that they can seem loud at the moment because there's just a lot of crisis going on and a lot of talk about conspiracy theories. But as far as I'm aware with the literature, like they're not rising and rising. And once these existential crises go away, then perhaps they'll just become a little bit more quiet.
Then what do you say about the top vocal voices in podcast industry? I'm going to give you an example. Joe Rogan is the king of podcast in United States, right? He believes there are aliens. Following that, you have so many videos. If you go on YouTube, it's unbelievable. And the amount of likes, the amount of comments, the amount of people that believe in them, it just blows my mind away. And I'm saying, listen, I don't know. I don't have an answer if aliens exist or not. And actually, I'm having an alien conspiracy theorist on the podcast in 2 weeks to talk about that. But what do you say from their point of view, these top leaders, even in COVID, mask mandate, vaccinations. And I think I read your studies where, people were like, did they believe the media? Did they believe the conspiracy theory that masks don't do anything? The vaccine is not real. What do you have to say to that point? Because that's kind of not increasing, but it's kind of escalating the spread of the conspiracy theories to the masses all across the globe.
Yeah. As I said earlier, there's not research that I've been doing anyway, and not there must be some out there where they're looking particularly at these conspiracy leaders, as you say. But I've just remembered there is a term which this is another way that you could look at them. Maybe some are conspiracy believers, and I'd say you could use that if they definitely believe in what they're talking about and they're spreading. But perhaps there is another reason, and there's a term called conspiracy entrepreneur. So people perhaps making money out of this, and a lot of people with podcasts are, and especially if they have huge followings, and with the likes on Twitter now, or X, whatever you want to call it,
right?
You can get revenue off of that now if you have a certain amount of following. So perhaps it's really hard to know the real motives of a lot of these conspiracy leaders, especially when, as you were saying earlier, if there's so much scientific consensus on a topic and then, this certain leader just doesn't believe in it, is it because they really don't believe in it, or they've tapped into a market here and they know that they can make a lot of money? I don't know. I mean, it's really hard to tell, but I assume that I would initially think that a lot of people that are like the leaders, as you say, that they do believe in what they're saying, because otherwise it's just dishonest and they really are just going to make money out of the situation. But yeah, obviously this can have an effect on the amount of people that are going to start believing in conspiracy theories. But I just don't know the answer as to whether it is increasing, if it's bringing more people into the fold. I think it's these are really important questions that you're asking, and probably more research needs to be done on this, to be honest, because it's hard to give you a direct answer on it.
Great. So I'm going to stick to your expertise, which is the attachment anxiety in conspiracy theories. Now, I was wondering if you see any associations between other demographic categories in that sector, attachment anxiety, such as age or gender, and tendency to believe in conspiracy theories.
Yeah, no, there was no so we always included age and gender in our studies as well, and there wasn't really they didn't affect the results at all. There wasn't really an older age or a younger age or a particular gender that changed the results in any way. But just to let you know, I can definitely talk a lot more other than attachment anxiety, because as I said, there's all these other psychological motives, and that is just one small subsection. There's lots of other reasons why people are drawn to conspiracy theories. I could possibly talk about some of those.
Please.
So when I was talking about conspiracy theories and when I mentioned powerlessness, etc., that's related to this existential need to feel secure and in control, which we all have that need. We all want to feel secure. But we also have this need of knowledge. We want to feel like we understand the world. It's not nice not understanding. For some people, that it's not a bother. But there's one particular way of thinking that attracts people more to conspiracy theories than the other. So you can either kind of think critically and analytically about the world, or you can go by gut feelings and intuition. And it's this intuitive thinking style that is more related to conspiracy theories, which might explain why some people, even though there's scientific consensus on a certain topic, whether it be climate change or, you know, whether the earth is round or flat. So there's all this scientific consensus, but some people just have a gut feeling that that's not right. And these people are drawn to conspiracy theories, and that might explain why they're able to just, you know, not take on the scientific consensus.
Right. So I want to ask you, like, what aspects of conspiracy theory in the attachment anxiety are you looking at today in your current, you know, research? And then what is your end goal? Where does it stop, or it never stops?
Yeah, no. So I'm not looking at attachment anxiety anymore because I finished that PhD.
Right.
But I am actually in the process of writing up the paper for publication because I've still yet to do that. So it's funny that we're talking about this again because I am working on it, but I've been I kind of stopped
Right.
now because once I started this new job, I've got a whole new line of research to look
Right.
at.
And
so
is that research in the same line right now where you are at?
it's looking at conspiracy theories, yeah, but
Okay.
looking at the consequences of conspiracy theories. But we're not looking about why people are drawn to them, but more the, you know, the consequences to them for politics.
If you don't mind sharing that, that would be great, because that's actually a very important point.
Yeah.
Why people believe, but consequences, actually everything in life has consequences. So if you want to take time here to explain, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So like there's, as I said, there's 4 like main work packages that we've been looking at, and it's the consequences to politics, health, science, but also, and this is quite like, this is not really being looked at too much in the literature, but also the consequences for people who share them. So this might tap into actually like the leaders, as you were saying earlier, because one paper that we published quite early into the first year looked at how do people perceive conspiracy sharers, basically. And we looked at it in a few different ways. So in one study, because we want to know, because basically research has already shown that like conspiracy theories are stigmatized beliefs. You know, people associate people who share conspiracy theories as being, you know, crazy. Sometimes that's what's been shown in the literature. It's not something that we say. I think it's a little bit disparaging, but like this is what people, you know, do think. And so we wanted to kind of look into that in a little bit more detail about how people perceive conspiracy sharers. And in one study, we asked people to we asked them, like, we showed them a conspiracy theory and asked them, if you wanted other people to perceive you as unstable, how would you respond to this conspiracy theory? And people scored high on that, saying, yeah, if I wanted to appear unstable to others, I would say that I believe in this conspiracy theory.
Wow.
So people, like, you know, have that's how people, I guess, perceive themselves if they were going to pretend to be a conspiracy believer. But then also we looked into it. We also then looked on the flip side as well, and we create like a politician's speech. Like, it's made up, but it's like basically something you could probably find in an American politician's speech, because often they can talk about conspiracy theories. If you think about the deep state conspiracy theory, that's like Donald Trump's probably big conspiracy theory. So we kind of modeled this fake speech off of you know, text that's very similar to Donald Trump, but we didn't use the word Donald Trump or anything like that in there because we just wanted to see what people think of a politician who shares conspiracy theories. So we had this fake speech, which one speech basically talked about the deep state conspiracy theory and how it's a real thing, and then we had another politician speech that we made up, which basically said the opposite, that said like deep state is not a real thing. And then we asked people, you know, how do you perceive these two different politicians? And basically the conspiracy sharing politician got a bad rap compared to the anti-conspiracy sharing politician, in that like they perceive the conspiracy sharer as less honest and trustworthy. However, they were also less likely to want to vote for this politician.
That makes so much sense actually now.
But then there were these like other, like, I don't know if you want to call these potential benefits.
Right.
Basically, they were perceived as the conspiracy sharing politician compared to the anti-conspiracy sharing politician was perceived as, you know, an outsider or a rogue. who's probably more able to affect change. So although people said that they would have less intentions to vote and saw them as less trustworthy and things like that, they also saw them as an outsider, and someone who might be able to affect change. Which is like, if you think about Donald Trump, he was very well, but he's been the president now. But before he was probably considered an outsider and probably considered someone who's able to affect change. And someone like that was able to actually ultimately win the presidency one time. So, potentially conspiracy theories might be beneficial for some people, if the group of people that are perceiving this person is, they want an outsider, they want someone different to the typical political system, if that makes sense. We found that in three studies, like basically very similar results.
Wow. So let me ask you, is there any way to effectively debunk a conspiracy theory once it is out there? Or like what is your, based on your PhD, based on the research that you've done, what is the answer to that? Do you debunk them? Do you support them? Or do you oppose them?
This is a really difficult question, and something that's, so as time's gone on during this research, at the beginning, everyone's trying to find out why people are drawn to them. Now people, like what I'm doing at the moment, are concentrating on what are the consequences, and we know lots of people believe in them, so what are the consequences as well? But the next stage as well is, because we know now that there are lots of consequences, like not just what I was saying to you about politicians losing votes, but less people want to be vaccinated. Well, conspiracy believers are less likely to want to be vaccinated, less likely to want to try and combat climate change, less likely to want to vote, in politics. There's so many different consequences. So now, as you're saying, research needs to know, how do we intervene on this? Like, how do we stop these, at least harmful conspiracy theories, harmful conspiracy beliefs, at least the ones related to vaccinations and things like that. And in all honesty, like, the research is really early, and there isn't like a silver bullet at the moment. There isn't something that can, fix, like, just, it's not an easy task, basically. But there is some work that's being done in Cambridge, actually, and I believe it's Cambridge or Oxford. Sorry, I've just got mixed up in my mind. But they're looking at, this is quite cool actually as well. It's called psychological inoculation. So it works very similar to traditional inoculation, traditional vaccines, in that you expose someone to a weakened version of a virus, and it makes their body less susceptible to being infected by that virus at a later stage. So there's this thing called psychological inoculation, where you can do this in a number of different ways, where you can expose someone to, like, how conspiracy theories spread. So if you, and I can show you this, I can send you a link after this if you want. There's something called the bad news game. And in this game, your aim is to amass lots and lots of followers online, like this fake social media game. And your goal is to get as many followers as you can. And it basically tells you the ingredients for how to spread a conspiracy theory. And you can, like, use emotionally manipulative language. You can pretend that you're an authority figure when you're not, things like that. So basically this game, it basically tells you how conspiracy theories are spread. And then because you've played this game and then you've amassed followers, that later, after this game, when you go online or something, and then you might encounter a conspiracy theory, but then you can spot the signs, because you've already, you kind of know how these conspiracy theories are being spread. Does this make sense, Will?
Yeah, it does make sense. I just want to know, when you said this game, who is the originator of this game, or is it just a game on social media? Or, because I will definitely would love to look at that and actually try it myself. Yeah. And so is that something you also used, or you used in the past in your research or something?
Yeah, no. So I've not used it. It has been researched. So I'm just trying to. Yeah. I'm just trying to see what it was again. But no, it has been used in research, basically, and it is available now. Like, I can send you the link. And it's just basically one tool, a way of doing this psychological inoculation, where it basically just tells people, this is how conspiracy theories spread. This is how these are the techniques that are used, and because people, and what the idea theory is behind this is that because people then learn how these techniques are used, that when they then come across, fake news or conspiracy theories online, they have an idea, and they're less susceptible to it because they've been inoculated against it.
Yes.
So I hope that makes sense. I think it's quite cool, and it seems to be working. Like there's lots of it's not research that I'm doing, but it's colleagues that I know, and other colleagues that are other researchers around the world that are trying this out, and they're testing it, and they're finding that people who play this game or other methods of psychological inoculation, later down the line, they're less susceptible to conspiracy theories.
So I'm going to ask you a question. It's a tricky question, but I'm just curious to ask also. You're in UK, you did your PhD, your studies are based in UK, correct? Is it like local group of studies, right? Is it possible, now I don't have an answer, but I would love to know from you since you're a professional here, is it possible that someone from another country contradicts your thesis and presents the opposing views based on their countries?
Yes, yeah, and that has happened.
Oh, it is. So please,
yeah. So,
if you don't mind sharing, please.
No, absolutely, no. It was actually very interesting because this was before I started my PhD, and it was just after my master's. So in my master's, that's where I first found this relationship between attachment anxiety and conspiracy belief, and I published that work about a year after. And literally at the same time, another paper was published saying avoidant attachment and conspiracy belief.
Oh,
and
wow.
Basically, because I didn't go into avoidant attachment because I'm looking at attachment anxiety, but there are two insecure attachment styles: attachment anxiety and attachment avoidance. And in my work, I always measured both, but I only found attachment anxiety, not avoidance, to be associated with conspiracy belief. But in their paper, they found attachment avoidance mainly, and only to a lesser degree attachment anxiety, to predict conspiracy belief. The difference is that this was in Italian, so this was in Italy and among Italian samples. And mine was, mine was the UK and US. I had participants from UK and US. So I think you just reminded me about that, like, as you've asked that really good question, there sometimes can be some cultural differences. So like what I'm finding, what the psychology that I'm finding to predict conspiracy belief might not always be true in a different country, which is kind of what we found here. Now, I haven't really looked into that. And it's hard to really explain why when I haven't studied it. I can only guess as to why there are those differences. But
I'm sure you might also have opposing views to that. Like, listen, you're an expert in this, you chose attachment anxiety, and the other person presents, I'm just giving an example, attachment avoidance, avoiding attachment, sorry. And it's actually very interesting because their study says that avoiding attachment avoidance leads to more belief in conspiracy theories versus yours is attachment anxiety. Now, you have spent all these years studying this, and I'm sure at some point of time you would agree to them, maybe a little bit, but I'm also sure that you would also stand ground to your own study that you've spent years and years.
And I mean, that's why, in my PhD, I continued it and I ran another 10 studies, and I find the same thing, attachment anxiety is related to conspiracy belief and not attachment avoidance. Like I never find that. If anything, I only find that it's negatively related to it, which means it's just definitely, at least not in the UK and US. But that's why I'm saying, like, it's hard for me to say, oh, attachment avoidance is not related to conspiracy belief until I actually do a cross-cultural study where I look at, Italians and UK and US, all in one big study, systematically. It would be interesting to do, of just as I said, I'm starting this new job where I'm looking at consequences. So like, it's quite hard to find time to look at, things that I find personally interested in now. But yeah, I guess like, so what I would say is that like in the UK and US, it seems to be attachment anxiety. So I would argue that all the time. Like you won't find, I mean, if you do, it's going to be very rare. But attachment anxiety is the main attachment related variable with conspiracy belief, at least here in the UK and US. But the thing is, attachment styles is a lot to do with how you were raised, like how your parents raised you. It really is a strong determinant of your attachment style later in life. And perhaps, if I'm going to guess, like there's probably some differences in child rearing, with Italian in Italian population versus the UK and US population. I don't know what that is exactly, but my guess is that it might be related to that. Maybe there's more people with attachment avoidance in Italy than in UK and US. I'm not sure. Or maybe like there's different processes involved, psychological process, which I can't really explain about because I haven't looked into it. But I feel like there's definitely some cultural reason as to why we have these different results, but I haven't looked into it, and I don't know what the answer is yet.
I just have a couple of more questions before we wrap this up. I was just thinking about this, that you did your PhD in attachment anxiety. Now, attachment is considered or perceived as a positive sign of affection, endurance, right? Enduring affection. Yeah. Anxiety is not perceived something as a positive trait in a person. Yeah. So it's like a yin and yang, and you were able to combine the yin and yang and come up to a conclusion that these two factors, it's very hard to find that. Like they both are on the opposite spectrum.
No, so let me stop you there. So basically, there's, as I mentioned just a moment ago, there's avoidant attachment as well, and attachment anxiety, attachment avoidance. They're the two main, like what we call dimensions. Like they're two main factors in attachment, is anxiety and avoidance. Now, if you're high on either one of those, then you're insecure. However, if you are low on attachment avoidance and low on attachment anxiety, then you are secure. You have a secure attachment. So, when I'm saying attachment anxiety, I'm not saying positive, negative. Like attachment anxiety is an insecure attachment.
Okay.
If I say secure attachment, then that means low on anxiety, low on avoidance. So they don't feel worried. They don't feel worried about their relationships, and they actually want relationships. Because people with attachment avoidance, they prefer like they don't like being in close relationships. People with attachment anxiety want to be in close relationships, but they're worried about them.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, but when you're low on both, then you want relationships and you're not worried. That's the kind of a simple way to put it. So I hope that's kind of cleared that up.
Yeah, absolutely. The last question I want to ask you is, I know you're studying the consequences in your new job of conspiracy theories. And I do remember you mentioned the political, the health, social, different aspects. If I was to ask you which one of these do you find most intriguing, which one would that be and why?
I guess I
just don't want to get you in trouble. That's it.
No, not at all. No, I think. I thought you was about to ask which one do you think is the most important. And if you was to say that, then I would probably say, it's difficult. It's going to either be like one of the health related or science related consequences, because the science would relate to climate change, and then health related, that's like vaccinations and things like that. I guess maybe like the science consequences, I guess, like, because I think people need to take climate change a little bit more seriously. So I think that's like a really important work package, like consequences to pay attention to. But like the most intriguing one is actually the work package I'm leading at the moment, which is the consequences for people who share them, because there's not a lot of research that's been done in this. And interestingly, because of the questions you've raised, you're actually making me think that maybe we need to pay a little bit of attention to the leaders as well. So how do people perceive, the leaders of the conspiracy?
I mean, you have Rishi Sunak in your country, and people in America have different views on him versus people in UK might have different views. It's normal, right? It's standard. So, but listen, if you're a political leader, the country looks up to you. It's as simple as that right now. So back to the point you were talking about, that you would probably go with the science aspect of the consequential side of conspiracy theories.
Yeah, so it does baffle me, and it's kind of I think it's related to the health as well. They're kind of intertwined, right? Because science feeds into a lot of health related matters like vaccines and things like that, and it just it does baffle me how so many people would disagree with huge scientific consensus, and that's just because they inherently don't trust science anymore. They have a distrust against scientific figures and just the scientific community in general. We're going to do a lot more work on just uncovering these consequences, and hopefully that can feed into research in the future that tries to figure out ways that we can help with this, try to increase people's trust in science, and at the same time decrease their beliefs in conspiracy theories, at least related to these harmful conspiracy theories anyway.
Well, I would love to have you back, once that research comes out. Anything else, Dr. Ricky, or that we missed on your PhD? Any point you wanted to make or something?
No, we talked about that quite. It's been a long time since I talked about my PhD, actually. So we definitely discussed quite a bit of that. The paper on that is available online. Like, it's an open access paper. I'm happy for people to have a little look at that, and they can tell
Please, if you don't mind sending that, I will actually put that. We will put that in the description of this video, so people who want to read that, and I'm sure they will, including myself, I would love to read that paper as well.
Great. That's great. And in that case, there's a couple of other things that I can send you then. When I talked about these broad motives, that the paper can go into a lot more detail on that, and also the bad news game as well, which is
please, that would be great if you don't mind. Well, Ricky, I want to thank you so much. I know this is this is an amazing area for scrutiny, and I appreciate the work that you have done and you're still doing, and helping us better understand some of the ways people think. So I'm going to thank you so much once again for taking the time out. It was really fun chatting with you here, and I definitely look forward to having you again once you have the consequences research out on this topic.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Sid, and thank you for inviting me, and I've had a great time too. Cheers.
Thanks, Ricky. Bye-bye. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.